All right, picture this. My mother-in-law's in town, aka our babysitter, who loves to be on grandma duty, and my husband and I are ready for an epic date night. We get all dressed up, we say goodnight to our boys, and then cue the romantic vibes as we have an amazing night out on the town, right? Well, not quite. Instead, what happens is we get in the car, we look at each other, and we say, now what? Seriously, 5 to 10 minutes sitting there, stuck in the driveway, trying to decide where the hell to go. I had my ideas. He, of course, had his. It was a classic game of decision limbo mixed with moments of annoyance and irritability. And you know what's wild? This sort of shit happens to us all the time. Whether it's the classic, what do you want for dinner? What movie do you want to watch tonight? What type of cereal do you want me to get at the grocery store? Decision fatigue is real, my friend, and we're getting bombarded by more and more options every day. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about why decision making is so difficult for our brains, how decision making impacts our anxiety, and 5 tips that you can use next time to make your life easier when faced with a decision. So, let's get started. To really understand all of this, we first need to take a look at how your brain works. And at a basic level, there are two prominent players that I need you to know about. I like to call them the thinking brain and the emotional brain. At the heart of the emotional brain lies the amygdala. And the amygdala is what drives your feelings, your instincts, and your responses to the world around you. So, the way I like to look at it is that the amygdala plays a pivotal role in orchestrating your emotional experiences, and it's famous for being able to initiate that classic fight, flight, or freeze response that you go through when you feel like you're in danger. And you know what I'm talking about, right? It's when your internal alarm system perceives a threat, whether it's real or perceived, and your amygdala takes charge. It alerts your survival responses and it primes your body so that your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your attention sharpens as your body prepares to take action. Now, outside of your emotional brain, you also have your thinking brain. And the primary player here is the prefrontal cortex, and this is located just behind your forehead. This region of your brain is a powerhouse, and it's notorious for its executive functioning abilities. So things like planning, analyzing, and decision making. So if your amygdala is your alarm system of the brain, your prefrontal cortex is like the CEO. So now that you understand the brain a little bit better, why is decision making so damn difficult? Now, I don't know if you've heard about this before, but something that makes your brain special is its ability to make predictions. And the reason why this is so important is that when you're faced with a decision, whether it be a small one or a big one, the thinking part of your brain steps up as your go to strategist. It will create scenarios, calculate odds, and envision the future. It's what helps you go through all the endless possibilities and steers your actions towards the most favorable outcomes. So, when you have to make a decision, a huge factor is whether you have too little or too much information. When you have too little information, your brain starts to spiral because, in order to make accurate predictions, you need to have accurate information. So, when you don't have the information you need, your thinking brain will go into overdrive. It'll try to foresee the future by playing out various versions of what might happen based on the option you choose. And a lot of the time, it has to essentially fill in the gaps with best guess predictions. It's kind of like trying to solve a puzzle without having all the pieces. You try to make sense of the situation as best as you can, but in reality, the details are missing and everything just feels incomplete. On the other hand, having too much information can be equally problematic. In this situation, you have all the puzzle pieces, but the sheer volume is overwhelming. Your brain becomes flustered and it experiences what behavioral economists call choice overload. And this is defined as the impact of having too much information to make choices when planning. So, all of this information so far applies really to everyone. But here's my next question: how does this specifically apply to those of us who struggle with anxiety? So, to answer this, we really need to know what anxiety is. And I really like psychiatrist and neuroscientist Judson Brewer's description of anxiety in his book, Unwinding Anxiety. He shares a simple, clear, and easy to remember equation: it's fear plus uncertainty equals anxiety. So, let's break this down a little bit. When someone with anxiety encounters a decision that isn't straightforward, the act of decision making becomes an emotional roller coaster. The fear of making the wrong choice coupled with the uncertainty about what the future holds from that choice, creates a perfect storm for the anxiety response to be triggered. When you already have anxiety at baseline, your fear response tends to be more heightened. So when you add the what if and the worst case scenario thinking to that mix when making a decision, it can really cause you to feel like you're in danger, even though the danger is only in your mind. And so, if you're not able to break free from this negative cycle of thoughts, your emotional brain can go into overdrive and overshadow the thinking part of your brain. It's important to remember that when emotions are high, logic is low. And this shutting down of the thinking part of your brain is what results in you feeling stuck and as if you're in thought paralysis. Psychologist Dr. Barry Schwartz specifically talks about the impact of having too many choices. He writes in his book, The Paradox of Choice: Why More is Less, that there are two problems with having too many choices. The first is that it produces paralysis rather than liberation. He talks about a study that was done looking at investments in voluntary retirement funds. Researchers were able to gain access to investment records from Vanguard, which consisted of around a million employees and 2,000 different workplaces. They found that for every 10 mutual funds that the employer offered, rates of participation dropped by 2%. So if 50 funds are offered, rates drop by 10%. This is just crazy, right? It just shows that by having too many options to choose from, people find it very difficult to choose at all. Making a decision is so hard that these people were willing to pass up on free match money from their employer. The second problem he found was that when we have too many options, we end up becoming less satisfied with the result of our choices than we would be if we had fewer options to choose from. And this can be from a variety of reasons. A lot of us have a grass is greener mentality, and we imagine all the possibilities that could have come if we made a different choice. And this is especially true for the big decisions we make in life, such as our spouse, the number of children we have or even don't have, where we live, what we do with our money, and the list goes on and on. So now that you know why decision making is so difficult for your brain and the impact it has on your anxiety, I want to leave you with 5 tips that will make your life easier the next time you have to make a decision. Tip number 1 is to first evaluate your emotional state prior to trying to make a decision. And if need be, work on calming your amygdala because remember, when emotions are high, logic is low. There are a ton of ways to do this, and I'm definitely not going to be able to cover them all today. But things to consider are relaxation techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, maybe some breath work, visualization, progressive muscle relaxation could be a good idea. And then if that's not your vibe, you can also consider things like getting physical exercise, prioritizing sleep, connecting with others, journaling, exposing yourself to cold temperatures. Not a lot of people know about this one, but I love it. So examples of this could be a cold shower or putting an ice pack on the back of your neck. By incorporating these strategies into your daily life, you can optimize the functioning of your thinking brain, and you can ensure that it remains online and ready for the challenges of decision making. Tip number 2 is to make sure that any collateral information you use to make a decision is reliable and credible. This includes the channels you watch, the people you listen to, and the articles you read, right? There's so much bullshit out there these days. So be cautious of sources that rely heavily on personal opinions and not on hard evidence. I want you to try to base your decision on objective rather than subjective information. So look for numbers, statistics, and measurable data. Make sure to always try to tease out the facts from the story so that you don't get lost in other people's judgments and beliefs. Tip number 3 is to be aware of your own biases, and there are 2 concepts that I want you to know about. Confirmation bias is the tendency we have to seek out information that supports our existing beliefs. So, say you go to your doctor and he recommends a medication. If you love the idea of this medication, you'll likely go on Google and read about all the positive reviews that people have posted about it. But on the other side, right, if you hate the idea of the medication, you'll likely go searching for horror stories of people who've had awful experiences on it. And if you don't believe me and you want to test this, go look on any of the medication videos that I've made, especially the ones on benzodiazepines. You'll see a huge divide between the lovers and the haters, and sometimes reading through everything is just kind of entertaining. The second concept I want you to know about is the bandwagon effect. And this is the tendency to believe in something because many other people do, right? We're often influenced by the actions or the opinions of large groups of people because we want to be part of the group. Now, as you can imagine, the problem with this is that the popularity of an idea or a trend doesn't always make sense, right? Remember that Tide Pod challenge? So, if you really want to own your decision, make sure you aren't just following the crowd or falling trapped to popular opinion. Tip number 4 is to prepare ahead of time and expect sucky emotions. Prospect theory teaches us that our minds are wired to respond more intensely to potential losses than to gains, right? It's this whole idea of loss aversion. We also have a tendency to overestimate the likelihood of rare, low probability events while underestimating the likelihood of more common, high probability outcomes. And knowing this and acknowledging that it's part of the process, it can really help you approach decisions with a realistic mindset and reduce the surprise factor down the road. Lastly, tip number 5 is to try to embrace a growth mindset. It's important to recognize that most decisions in life won't make or break us. So we want to try to let go of the idea of the perfect decision, right? Because very few decisions are ever flawless. And then on top of that, a lot of mistakes are opportunities for growth. So at the end of the day, my friend, just make the damn decision and maybe trust that more opportunities will come your way another time. That's all I have for you for today. If you found value in this video, make sure to leave a comment or a review. Talk soon, my friend. Until then, keep kicking ass and crushing it.